Hello and welcome back to the channel NPA Discovery, where stories aren't just told, they're brought to life, one chapter at a time. If this is your first time here, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of truth, heartbreak, or revelation. We dive into the lives of icons, not to judge them, but to understand them. Today's episode, a man whose name became synonymous with chaos, rebellion, and tragedy. A figure who helped define an era, not through his talent, but through his downfall. But because it's a story of a young man who was idolized by a movement that often devoured its own, a man who became a symbol of punk rock's raw defiance and, tragically, its fatal flaws. Let's begin. The birth of viciousness. Simon John Ritchie didn't come into the world screaming for attention, though the world certainly screamed his name later. Born in London in 1957, Simon was raised amidst instability. His father walked out on the family, and his mother, and Beverly, struggled with addiction. What does that mean for a child? It means growing up without a reliable safety net. It means learning to survive, not thrive. By the time Simon was a teenager, he'd already experienced more emotional abandonment than most adults. His father never returned, and his mother's coping mechanisms often left him to fend for himself. One of the few constants in his life. Neglect. This wasn't a troubled kid lashing out for no reason. This was someone screaming into a void, looking for belonging. And like so many others before and after him, he found it, not in family or school, but in rebellion. He became Sid Vicious, a name born out of a joke after being bitten by a hamster named Sid. Sid is really vicious, someone joked. And just like that, an identity was born. But names have power. And in Sid's case, the name became prophecy. The rise of a myth, not a musician. Let's address the elephant in the room. Sid Vicious was not a talented musician. Even by punk's unpolished standards, Sid barely knew how to play his instrument. But punk wasn't about skill. It was about attitude, presence, chaos. And Sid? He embodied all of it. Before joining the Sex Pistols, Sid co-founded a band called Flowers of Romance. They never performed live. He didn't care. He was more focused on being seen than being heard. Sid's stunts got him noticed, smashing a music critic in the head with a chain, attacking clubgoers, and generally making headlines wherever he went. These weren't acts of rebellion for the sake of justice. They were acts of desperation, attempts to prove that he mattered. One of the most illustrative moments of Sid's hunger for identity came when he started busking with Johnny Rotten, soon-to-be frontman of the Sex Pistols. They didn't play well. They didn't care. They screamed and thrashed until people paid them to stop. That, to them, was success. It's easy to romanticize this now, to imagine these early moments as part of some grand artistic journey. But in reality, it was two lost boys trying to outshout their own pain. Enter the Sex Pistols, enter the fire. The moment Sid joined the Sex Pistols in 1977, the band gained its most infamous member. Manager Malcolm McLaren called Sid the ultimate punk figure. He looked the part. He lived the chaos. He didn't play bass on their iconic album Nevermind the Bollocks, guitarist Steve Jones did. But Sid was the spectacle. And for a movement that prized image as much as sound, that was enough. His behavior grew increasingly erratic. At one point, Sid carved "Gimme a Fix" into his chest. During a club gig, he threw a bottle that blinded a fan. These weren't just rebellious acts, they were signals. Signals that Sid was spiraling. McLaren, by his own admission, didn't manage the Pistols as much as provoke them. He exploited their instability, letting chaos fester because it sold records. But when it came to Sid, he wasn't just playing with fire, he was pouring gasoline on a mental health crisis. Sid's relationship with American groupie Nancy Spungen only deepened the downward spiral. Nancy wasn't just a girlfriend. She was a mirror. Troubled, dependent, manipulative, she enabled Sid, and he enabled her. And soon, the myth they were building became deadly. The Chelsea Hotel, love, addiction, and the breaking point. When Sid and Nancy landed in New York in 1978, they were already lost causes in the eyes of many. The Sex Pistols had imploded. Sid was trying to launch a solo career, but the music wasn't the story anymore, the chaos was. The drugs were. The volatility between him and Nancy was now the headline. They moved into room 100 of the Chelsea Hotel, a haven for artists, poets, musicians, and drifters. But for Sid and Nancy, it became a pressure cooker. Witnesses described constant fighting, screaming matches at all hours, physical violence, and a near-constant haze of heroin and barbiturates. Nancy had effectively taken over as Sid's manager. But more than that, she had become his lifeline and his captor. Sid was addicted, to heroin, to fame, to the attention, and perhaps most of all, to the emotional intensity Nancy offered. Their bond wasn't just toxic, it was mutually destructive. It wasn't love in the traditional sense. It was codependency in its rawest, ugliest form. And on October 12, 1978, it all came to a horrifying climax. Nancy Spungen was found dead in the bathroom of their hotel room. She had been stabbed in the abdomen. Sid was arrested and charged with murder. What happened that night? Sid first confessed. Then retracted it. He claimed he was asleep. He claimed she fell on the knife. He claimed he remembered nothing at all. The truth was, and still is, a mystery. But what we do know is this: Sid was a deeply unstable, traumatized young man in the throes of addiction and mental collapse, and he was suddenly at the center of a homicide investigation. The punk scene, already teetering on the edge, was stunned. And the boy who had once screamed for attention, was now drowning in it. Sid's arrest made global headlines, and with it came a flurry of speculation. Was he truly capable of killing Nancy? Or had he simply been too far gone to know what happened that night? Virgin Records paid his $50,000 bail, and for a short time, Sid walked free. But freedom didn't mean healing. It meant more spiraling. While out on bail, Sid was involved in multiple violent incidents. He slashed a man with a broken bottle at a nightclub. He was rearrested and spent time at Rikers Island, detoxing cold turkey. It was there that many said they saw the real Sid, scared, broken, unsure. He had one last chance. Released again, he returned to New York, reconnected with old friends, and on February 1, 1979, at a small gathering, he shot up heroin that had been delivered to him by an acquaintance. That night, he lay down in a borrowed bed, under a blanket his mother had wrapped around him. He never woke up. He was 21 years old. A note was later found in his pocket. It read, "We had a death pact, and I have to keep my half of the bargain. Please bury me next to my baby." Some say it was suicide. Others say it was accidental. Maybe even inevitable. But in the end, Sid Vicious became exactly what punk rock never wanted to admit it could create, a martyr of its own recklessness. Sid Vicious lived fast and died young. But the tragedy wasn't just in how he died, it was in how little he was ever loved for who he truly was. He needed help. He needed structure. He needed someone to see the scared child behind the leather jacket. And maybe, just maybe, if someone had, his story would have ended differently. Punk rock gave him a voice, but it didn't give him peace. Let this story be a reminder: behind every myth, there's a person. Behind every scream, there's a silence that needs to be heard. If you found meaning in this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to help shape the stories we tell next, join our membership program for exclusive perks. Thank you for watching, and remember, even the loudest voices sometimes need the gentlest listening.